Red Dead Redemption 2, GTA 5, Fallout 4, Call of Duty, Spider-Man, Fortnite, Apex Legends. These are some examples of the most popular video games of all time and some of the highest rated and best-selling video games of all time. Beautiful games that cost companies hundreds of millions of dollars and take up to 10 years to complete. But I'm not playing them. I've experienced a change, or a shift if you will, in my life. These days, I seem to only enjoy playing indie games. Now, AAA games have given me some of my favorite memories in video gaming, of course. It was something we all played for a long time. It was really the only thing that was available to us and being pushed on us as consumers. And AAA games still rule the market. They make the most amount of money, they get pushed during all the Game Award shows, they get shoved in our faces. But there's something different about indie games. Something unique that feels like you can't get from a AAA title. Indie games have charm and realism. The humor feels personal and almost relatable. They make games because they love to and they love their games. They create an art piece and put it out into the world without any expectation of what people think of it. And the journey to get here started all the way back in college. In around 2017, 2016, everybody was playing Fortnite, Rocket League, Call of Duty, the online shooters and online multiplayer games. It was honestly all I was playing. I was definitely not playing indie games back then. I was someone that valued graphics, that valued sleekness and overall modern feels to video games. Now, I did grow up with things like the N64 and the GameCube, but those were just in the past. If I was looking for a game and anything looked pixelated or 2D, I didn't even give it a chance and I just kind of went on to the next one. But that all changed for me when the SNES Classic was released. You see, like I said, I grew up on the Nintendo 64 and the GameCube. I didn't have a chance to play SNES games. And at the time, retro consoles were kind of making a comeback and were cool to own. SNESs and their games were insanely overpriced, so this seemed like a good opportunity for me to finally experience some games that I never got to. I didn't know how much I'd like them because of the graphic style, but I gave it the benefit of the doubt because it came out when it did, and it was as popular as it was. So I played a game on the SNES console. I loved it. I played another, and another, and another. And eventually, I got to a point where I played through all the games, and I really enjoyed them. There was something simple, something charming about these games back in the 90s. Something that really hasn't been replicated since. I started diving deeper into SNES games, going out and getting a retro console so I could play more of them. It was an itch I never knew I had as a gamer, but once I scratched it, it was hard to go back. NES, SNES, PS1, all the consoles that had games that I wanted to experience, because this was the first time that I really had felt this way. It was like a realization that games didn't have to have sleek graphics and look really good to be really fun. The games didn't have a ton of depth to them, but they had a lot of love and a lot of passion poured into them. Once I was able to appreciate the 8-bit and 16-bit video games from back in the day, my whole perspective kind of changed on what I was looking for in a video game. Retro games were obviously very expensive to have, and I didn't really know the market of indie modern titles that looked a lot like SNES games. But I had a Nintendo Switch. A Nintendo Switch has an eShop that very much promotes indie games. And that's where it all started. I started looking up the most popular indie games and starting with those, and then moving down to some that I kind of searched for and found that hidden diamond in the rough. And once I started, I couldn't stop. Hollow Knight, Celeste, Disco Elysium, Hades, Terraria, Katana Zero, Dead Cells, Inside, Hotline Miami. But a lot of those games were under a specific genre that I knew I would like. It wasn't until I opened myself up to try games that I didn't think I would like. There was a game that kept popping up every time I would look up what great indie games I should be playing. Slay the Spire. Slay the Spire was honestly one of the first indie games I played that really opened me up to possibilities of different genres and different games. I would have never imagined myself enjoying a game like that a few years ago. A deck building roguelike. I hated playing cards growing up. My mom always wanted to play cards. I hated playing cards when I grew up. And I did not like board games either. But this game just made you feel smart. Putting runs together and different deck builds together, the differences in the characters, they all felt like they had their own identity and how their playstyle was. It was incredible, and I was hooked. At that point, I wanted to move on to other genres that I didn't really expect I'd like either. But one after another, I started opening up to different genres and different styles of video games. Papers, Please, Shovel Knight, Darkest Dungeon, Enter the Gungeon, which then started my path down the roguelike genre. And I'm not alone. A lot of people find this genre very addictive. It's a game that you can just throw on for an hour or two, do a run, make a little bit of progress, and then get off. There's no ties to it because every run is self-contained. The only thing that you're really progressing is the hub world or the permanent upgrades that you can then use on future runs. But you know what to expect. It's comfortable, it's consistent, and it's fun. I played every and any roguelike game that I could get my hands on, which really led me right into Risk of Rain 1 and ultimately Risk of Rain 2. Roguelikes in general are something that AAA developers could never emulate. It almost feels sacred to the indie video game space. Roguelikes and Metroidvanias in general have helped define the indie space and ultimately been ruled by the indie market. You see, indie games create new genres and reshape existing ones, creating games that identify with the games that they grew up with. For example, there's this game Tearscape, right? It's basically Zelda mixed with Bloodborne. It's an 8-bit style and it looks like it fits right on your Game Boy Color. The game is so heavily inspired by Zelda because the creator grew up playing that, and therefore creating a game that feels nostalgic and almost familiar to us. Games that we would have created if we could create games. There is an indie game for every possible genre. There's honestly something for everyone. Indie games also feel so raw and innovative, not afraid to take risks and try something new because they don't have $400 million invested in a game that just cannot fail. They're not under the pressure of being fired or replaced. They keep their mechanics simple, kind of like the old SNES games, as to not overthink what innovation looks or feels like. And then I tried to go back to the AAA games. And I'm a fan of a lot of series, like take Resident Evil for example, right? I love Resident Evil games. There are still some AAA games that I can play. However, AAA just feels so overproduced and overthought out, sloppy and soulless. Not to say that they're all bad, but most are repetitive. You start to notice the corporate greed, the lack of freedom, passion, and creativity, time constraints, copying, trying to jump on to the next wave or trend, so hyper-focused on what they think that we want from them, that what they're trying to create just gets so lost in translation. I can't tell you how many times I've played a AAA game recently where I thought, wow, I see what they're going for, but I also see where the time constraints and the pressures affected the execution. And now you've got AAA developers that are trying to jump in on the indie space by creating games that appear like they're indie, but they're not. But the community backs up the indie game space. And I just love how accepting and embracing the community is for these indie development studios to thrive. I hear more and more that people's favorite games are games that are created by indie studios, whether they know that or not. And I think with the fall of AAA right around the corner, the indie development space has a great lane to success. I always want to support indie games on this channel. I do a roguelikes of the week and also games you've never heard of every week. I really just want to try to promote that space because I feel like there's a lot of games that are untapped and a lot of developers that are unknown that are really, really talented and really good. Some of my favorite games recently have been from either 1 or 2 developer studios. So make sure to check out some of my videos every week for roguelikes and games you've never heard of that could be recommended to you. Thank you guys for watching. I really appreciate it. Make sure to hit subscribe and like the video. I've been wanting to do content like this for a long time, so I really appreciate any interaction or subscribers, anything like that. I really do.